Good morning, Skidaway. I am so glad that you've tuned in with me today. God has been working so diligently with me throughout Genesis as I study each chapter week by week. This week we are, of course, on chapter 7. Particularly, I want to talk about one verse, and that is, those that entered, male and female of all flesh, entered just as God had commanded him. Then the Lord shut him in. This verse happens in verse 16 of chapter 7, and it gives me chill bumps. I have a very active imagination, which is great for working with youth and kids, but when I'm reading this verse, if I think carefully on it for very long, my imagination will just run wild. I picture the end of the world happening and being shut into this ark, and it being dark and rainy and with feral and domesticated animals, and my heart starts pumping. This verse takes place after Noah had followed all of God's commandments in building the ark to the direct specifications of how long, how wide, etc. And it was such an undertaking that it took over 100 years. And we know from accounting given in 2 Peter that Noah must have spent those years and the years prior preaching about righteousness, because 2 Peter refers to him as a preacher of righteousness, so we know that's what he's been doing. We know that his words went unheeded, that the wickedness reached such a point that Noah and his family were the only ones saved. Given what I know about humans and our proclivity when it comes to wickedness with another human being, I have a feeling that he spent those years being mocked, being ridiculed. And then it starts taking me back to me and my faith. Have you ever been mocked for your beliefs? Have you ever been mocked for your faith? I know I have, several times in fact, but the most vivid moment for me came from my stepfather, David. As I mentioned last week, that relationship was strained between the two of us, between he and my mother. One day, after a very intense encounter, he asked if I believed he loved my mother, and I answered no. Of course, this made him very angry, and he asked why. And I began quoting to him 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Love is patient, love is kind. And by the time I got to it does not keep a record of wrong, he was beyond furious. He told me that I was a fool, and that that might be true if we lived in a perfect world, but we didn't live in one, and that I better learn to live in this one. He was obviously wrong. And I know this is true, and Genesis 7:17 proves it to me. When the world was seemingly coming to an end because of all of the evil around it, God called out to Noah and his family to be separate. The very definition of holy, he called them to be set apart, to be holy. And when they were obedient, they became so. He quite literally sealed them in. For Noah, he being God, shut them in the ark, setting them apart from everything else that's happening around them. Then he makes a covenant, and he seals that covenant with a rainbow. God has called us all to be holy, to live a perfect truth in an imperfect world. He has sealed us with the Holy Spirit. And I pray for all of us that, like Noah, we learn to be obedient to the part that we are so set apart. It's like he sealed us within an ark of our own. I pray that we all become preachers of righteousness by the lives that we live.